So the bear was like that, and the hunter was like this with the gun.
Mm-hmm.
And the hooker was like that, and the hooker seduces the hunter, and the hooker would be the winner.
And who gave you these instructions? Like, who gave you the directions for the game? Okay, and then?
And then, so, the hooker seduces the hunter. If you're the hunter against the bear, then you win over the bear because you're the hunter. But if you're a bear and the other person's a hooker, the bear beats the hooker.
What was the hooker explained as? Like a fishing hook?
No,
like somebody that hooks?
To seduce the hunter.
And the word seduced was used?
Yeah.
When y'all were...
Yeah.
Who used that word first?
Yes.
Wow. Hi parents, my name is Laura. I am a mom in San Antonio, Texas, and we need to talk about an adult drinking game that was taught in a San Antonio public school. I know about this game because my brave child said something when she saw something, and because unlike the school system that this happened in, my kid and I don't pay lip service. After 5.5 months of the school system refusing to call what happened what it actually is, this video is my promise kept to them. But first, I'll be sharing mature content in this video, so please use parental discretion if your kids are nearby. In September of this school year, a team building activity, actually a sexualized adult drinking game, was taught by 2 educators to about 60 middle schoolers at a small school campus called KIPP Middle School in the Almos Park area. This happened during the part of their advisory periods when they're supposed to be given social emotional strategies for success in life. And it's a program that's usually overseen by the school leader or school counselor. The game these children were taught is called Hunter, Bear, Hooker. Yes, hooker. And not the type that casts a fishing line. This is the adult sexualized version of a common childhood game, but instead of role-playing a rock, a paper, or a pair of scissors, teachers had these 12 to 13-year-old students play seducing hookers and shooting hunter or an angry bear. Yes, that's right. A game was taught in a school in San Antonio that normalized prostitution in a city like ours, which is a known trafficking hub. And don't forget that these at-risk kids had gunplay normalized. This story isn't just about the game played, though. It's about the effort that a KIPP public schools franchise, KIPP Texas, made to not only deny that the sexualization of kids on one of their campuses actually happened, but also to carve parents out from knowing that it happened and to cut them off from being able to be a key adult in the discussion surrounding this game with their children. By doing that, it allowed this game to fester for months in children's minds without any responsible adult helping them to process it. Let me clarify. I'm not one of the angry parents that just found out about this game. I'm the parent who immediately spoke up about it, and I've witnessed and documented the system's atrocious handling of this case for 5.5 months. This school made me watch them perform a slow atrocity on children, and while being able to take my student out immediately, I sat through this for the 59-ish kids that were left behind. Let me tell you what I've learned about KIPP while they made me watch. What I saw is that this system, whose claim to fame is offering disadvantaged and at-risk Black and Latino kids equity in education, is especially predatory. And that this game was played belongs to all of us, no matter what point of the moral or political spectrum that we live on. That a school with this robust level of national financial and moral support, and who is the face of progressive education in the United States, didn't have a safety blueprint for grooming speaks volumes. But before I tell you about KIPP's structural failures, let me tell you more about how this game was actually played. So, to recap, 2 teachers in 2 separate classrooms taught students this adult version of rock, paper, scissors. On the teacher's cue, students were to role-play a seducing hooker with a hand over an outstretched hip and the other hand behind their ear, and a hunter feigning to shoot a gun toward whatever character was improvised by the peer that he was paired with. If the shooting hunter and the seducing hooker were improvised, the shooting hunter would be seduced by the hooker, and she would win. To show intent to sexualize, it's important to know that much milder versions of this game exist, like rock, paper, scissors, or if teaching misogyny, it was still the goal, then the teachers could have come up with Bear Hunter Princess or Bear Hunter Woman, which you can find in a quick Google search. However, the most derogatory and sexualizing of these versions was chosen, that asked kids to pose as seducing hookers, confronting a man with a gun. The amount of ways that this normalizes bad things is a whole other video in itself, but a few messages sent to children that day in those two classrooms were that prostitution, a crime, can help diffuse another crime, assault, the pointing of a gun. That men can't control themselves against seduction. They can. That sexual violence can be portrayed in a school game. Let me break down what happened now after I brought administrators into the loop via the parent complaint, aka grievance process. In my original complaint, I asked KIPP Texas staff to identify this game as sexualization of students, to communicate with parents in culturally relevant ways, and to provide talking points to parents to help guide their children through this grooming. It also asked them to call this game sexual education, which it was. After 5 months of climbing 4 levels of KIPP Texas senior administration, all echoing each other, all of these levels denied that sexualization actually happened through this game, despite their own handbooks saying that it was. Read pages 21 and 61 that I'll link in the description below. They all lied about how it was addressed with parents. They did all of this in writing, which, again, I will link in the description below. It was only after I presented this case to the KIPP Texas School Board that any of these administrators were asked to do better by someone above them, which could feel like a win, but after members of the school board were heard deliberating this case, clearly disappointed with the administration's handling of it all, they still went on to give these 4 administrators a whole other month to do better. And what did those administrators do? They spent their bonus 3 weeks on fixing appearances. They reassigned a teacher, and they feigned contrition by sending an apologetic letter to parents, finally, that told them only half of what happened. Early on, I asked administrators to provide talking points to parents, yet the talking points offered to parents in this soggy letter were mere deflection points. What they needed to suggest that these parents discuss with their children was that prostitution is a crime, that men can indeed control themselves, that sexual violence is unnecessary to solve problems, that the word hooker is inappropriate, that gunplay against peers in school is always bad. Also withheld from parents is that this game has other milder versions, that the game was played by 2 teachers, and that the kids were motivated by candy, arranged by age, all of which shows intent to sexualize, strategy, and planning. This was premeditated sexualization and sexual harassment en masse of minor children, period. And what parents also don't know is that the highest levels of KIPP administration were also involved in keeping them out of the loop by agreeing with the principal's handling of this, expressly denying in writing 4 times the complaining parents' original request that parents be told at the time it happened, not half a school year later. But now, after the school board gets mad, these 4 levels suddenly feign remorse and they fake cooperation with the parent, and the best they could come up with was a letter with a contrite tone that doesn't actually apologize or provide meaningful change or even concretely address the teachings of this game with parents. Let me be clear, the district didn't work with me, as the letter states. They worked against me and against the parents whose kids attend their schools. Parents, there are better led schools out there. In KIPP School Board, there are better leaders out there. I'll end this by briefly introducing you to the outcomes of 3 of the children in the Hunter Bear Hooker audience that day. I heard student A tell their mother about this game, and that student was met with, "No quiero oír que estés causando drama en la escuela. Los maestros son para respetar," or in English, "I don't want to hear that you're causing drama at school. Teachers are to be respected." A reaction that at first seems uncaring or tone deaf, but it represents the general need that many of the families that KIPP serves have to stay off of authoritative radars because of immigration issues, trying to focus on coming out of poverty or navigating the legal system. KIPP Texas knows that many families that they serve won't speak up. Grooming is easier to do when families are quiet. Student B told one of her classmates that she was triggered by this game. Why? Because she had already, by the age of 12, been violently sexually assaulted. What adult helped that student process the re-traumatization if her parents weren't told about this game? She's had to sit in class with a teacher who laughs at sexual violence for 5.5 months. And lastly, look at what student C posted about a week and a half ago. This is a child who is so deep into having grooming normalized for him that he doesn't realize that it's actually happened. In his message, there's a recognition of authority. He calls her by the formal name Mrs. There's loyalty in his message. He mentions the game with the word hooker first because it's what he remembers. And whether he knows it or not, this child has passed on the game and its inappropriate concepts. Those 3 conditions, friends, is what pedophiles need to be successful. Quiet families, traumatized children, and loyalty from both. KIPP, Texas has all 3 of these served to them. And as we can see, by their refusal to give it a name and to genuinely do better, a school principal, assistant superintendent, a regional superintendent, and a state CEO of schools all have demonstrated their commitment to perpetuate the sexualization of children in their care. So I just got out of the last meeting with the KIPP board for the Bear Hunter Hooker game, and basically nothing changed. The board accepted the administrator's soggy letter of apology, which wasn't really an apology about the actual case, although they all had their poker faces on, and the director for all of KIPP Texas, the CEO, was kind of nervous when she was reading off of basically the same letter that was sent to the kids when she gave me her heartfelt apology, which I think she was more nervous to lose her reputation and her job than she actually was apologetic. So anyway, so the board accepted the director's remedies, right? The remedies that they did grant, which were to put in the like more training for teachers, which should have existed a long time ago. They also, interestingly, hired an outside agency to come and talk to the kids. It's actually an outside abuse that handles, an outside agency that handles child abuse. So imagine that a district has hired an agency to come to talk to their kids about sexualization abuse that the district themselves caused and perpetuated by letting it sit there for 5 months. So, you know, all of the teachers are still employed, which is, you know, the board, I think, you know, I don't have any, my impression of the board is similar to my impression of the administrators, right? So if the board is leaving these people, the teacher and these people who couldn't find their moral compass for 5 months to still run the show, what's to tell me that they're going to find their moral compass to continue preventing the sexualization of kids or holding their staff accountable? Like, it just doesn't make sense. So I don't have any squeaky, you know, nice impression, right, of how this organization is run. And it's interesting because the board, the only board member, there was only one board member present, which was the chair. The other ones were jogging or at home, in their kitchens, in their cars, kind of like how I am, maybe on their way somewhere, comfortable offices, right? So these board members don't have the life that these kids have, right? So while they're taking Zoom calls from their house, these kids are dealing with having been sexualized, having been groomed. And while the school is paying lip service and providing all of these, you know, things for them now, it doesn't take away that they're going to forever, these kids are going to forever remember that they had a teacher that had them pose as a hooker and encourage somebody to point a gun at them